afternoon and all. I'm Geetha from CSE Department, Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research. In this video, we are going to see the concepts of application layer under networking. So before going to this, first we must know what are the layers are there in the voice reference model. We have 7 layers: data link layer, physical layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer. So application layer at the top of the voice reference model. So it's used to transfer the data between one host to another host. That is what kind of data has to be transferred, whether it is email transfer or file transfer, or what kind of transmission has been done. This will be decided by the application layer. This is responsible for the end-to-end, that is host to host, from one side to another side communication. So first we will see domain namespace. So what is domain namespace? So that is DNS, a domain we know. So domain namespace actually we could see everywhere. That is when we are surfing in something in the internet, we could see that last.com. Okay, fine. So that is .com.edu.org. So that is called the domain. That varies, depends upon the area or type of the data what we are searching for, or the type of the organization. Okay, that is called the domain name. So when the user is requesting something, the data will be forwarded to the corresponding domain. The domain will be connected to the server. Server will respond to the domain, and through the domain, the data will be given back to the user. So this is the procedure. So many types are there, like generic domain, country domain, the military domain, government organizations, educations. Many types are there. We will see this one by one. So how this domain name will be retrieved? So this host requests the DNS name server to resolve the domain name. And that is when some URL has been given. First, it will be search what comes under what type of domain. And then it will be given to the server, and the server will take the details or IP address, and it will redirect it to the corresponding domain. To the domain, the data will be retrieved, and that will be forwarded to the, or that will be displayed to the users. So that is the procedure. And so here, see, we have a host who wants the IP address, and the host. See, this is to resolve csc.additive.in. So just this is an example, right? So this will be given to the name server. Name server will give the respond back. That is, it will give the particular IP address. Through this IP address, the data will be retrieved that can be displayed to the user side. And so we will see a few examples. Here we have inverse domain, generic domain, and country domain. And list is specific to, that is bottom to top. See, you have smtpmail.yahoo.com or popmail.xyz.net. So if you see from bottom to top, we will get the corresponding URL. It will ends with the corresponding domain, starts with the basic what we are searching for and surfing in the net. And this is the example. So when we see the bottom to top, we will get the exact email URL of what we are searching for. This chal.atc.fhda.gov.edu or .com or .ent. Depends upon the organization or industry, the domain will vary. So how does it works? So this DNS client server network communication protocol, DNS client send request to the server, while DNS server send response to the client. The client request contain a name which is converted into an IP address known as a forward DNS lookup, while request containing IP address which is converted into a name known as reverse DNS lookup. This DNS implements a distributed database to store the name of all the hosts available on the internet. If a client like a web browser sends a request containing a host name, then a piece of software such as DNS resolver sends a request to the DNS server to obtain the IP address of the host name. If DNS server does not contain the IP address associated with the host name, then it forwards the request to another DNS server if a IP address has arrived at the resolver, which in turn completes the request over the internet protocol. This is how the DNS works, and these are all the examples. See, left side what we have is domain name, and right side what we have is the types of the organization or about for what the domain has been created. Then arrow AERO for airlines, then for business BIS, then .com commercial organization, COOP for cooperative, EDU for education institutions, GOV for government institutions, info for information service providers, info for international organizations, military groups, MIL, the name, net for network support centers, and finally ORG for non-profit or any kind of organizations rather than government organizations, any kind of organizations. For this, the domain has been created as ORG. Next one we have DDNS. DDNS in some systems it will be there. It will be there by default. It's not much used in our local host or our home PC. It's used by the corporate systems. If it is not, it can be bought from the ISP, that is Internet Service Providers. This is not much important as DNS, but DNS provides better facility to handle large number of hosts or systems. The method of automatically updating the name server in the domain name server, often real time, with the active DDNS configuration of its configured host names, address, or other information. So this DDNS, when binding between a name and an address, is determined the information sent usually by the DHCP. DHCP means Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. With this protocol, configure a host which is related with that client server communication. And this DDNS can use an authentication mechanism to provide security and prevent unauthorized changes in the DNS records. So this DDNS is typically implemented as a small piece of software. Of course, as we have seen already, it has been implemented by default during the manufacturing. It would have DDNS client software as well as in the DDNS server software. DDNS client software typically takes the role of detecting an IP address changes on the end computer side and immediately sending DNS update messages to the corresponding authoritative DNS server. So this DDNS client software may be implemented as a part of the OS itself, or it can be installed as a part of the add-on software provided by the Internet Service Provider. So this separate DDNS server components will be needed only in the cases where vendor-specific proprietary update messages are sent by the DDS clients to the Internet Service Providers DNS service. So this is how the DNS will communicate with the server side. See, person A is web server that will be communicate with the internet through the dynamic DNS updated software. Why that has been given as a compound disk means it has been it can be bought or it can be retrieved or it can be fetched to some other source if it is not there. It will be communicated with the internet and it will check by the firewall for any malicious attacks or hackers or viruses. Then it will be forwarded to the server, any kind of server. It may be name server, it may be a DNS server, a dynamic DNS server, any kind of server, it will be forwarded. This is DDNS. So DNS and DDNS is important points under this application layer. The next we will see Telnet. Telnet for terminal network. It's a type of protocol that enables one computer to connect to the local computer. It's used as a standard TCP protocol for virtual terminal service, which is given by the ISO. So this mainly deals with the devices. So this starts connection known as the local computer which is being connected to, that is a subsys connection known as the remote computer. When the connection is established between local and the remote computer during telnet operation, whatever that is performing on the remote computer will be displayed by the local computer. Telnet operates on client-server principle. Local computer uses Telnet client program and the remote computer uses Telnet server program. So this is very important points under this. It has the client-server principle. So local computer uses Telnet client program. The remote computer uses Telnet server program. So here these all are the commands used. So commands of the Telnet are identified by a prefix character. Interpret as the command IAC. Interpret IAC is a very important command under this Telnet, which is having the code, particular code 255. And IAC is followed by the command and option codes. Basic format of the command is also shown. That is IAC command code, option code. So, interpret as command, then what is the command code, or what is the option code. So this is about Telnet. The next one is file transfer protocol. So here, as we say already, so this application layer is responsible for transferring something from the upper side of a particular host to another system. Maybe mail transit, maybe file transfer. So this www, this HTTP all supports mail transfer of any kind of web page, transferring web page or any accessing links, all those things. FTP used for file transfer. When the systems are connected to LAN, we can share the files through the systems. We can ping, we can chat, we can ping by using this IP address or mm, when those are connected with the internet. So this kind of transfer. So if it is connected through LAN, we can even access the files of another system also. That is also possible. That is also possible. So FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. FTP is a standard internet protocol provided by TCP/IP used for transmitting the files from one host to another. It is mainly used for transferring the web page files, what we have seen already, from that created to the computer that accesses the server for the other computers on the internet. And it's also responsible for downloading the files also to the computer from the servers, provides the sharing of files. It is used to encourage the use of remote computers and transfers the data more reliably and efficiently. So this actually FTP is very important protocol under application layer because it is responsible for file transfer. File transfer is very important to achieve any kind of goal. So why it is used? So although transferring files from one system to another is very simple and straightforward, sometimes it causes problems. For example, two systems may have different file conventions, so it may lead to issues. So this time protocols must be used properly to avoid this type of confusions among the files format. Two systems may have different ways to represent the text and data. Two systems may have different directory structures. This has also become an issue when the file is being transferred from one system to another system. So in this place also FTP will be useful. FTP protocol overcomes these problems by establishing two connections between hosts. That is, one connection used for data transfer, another one is used for control connection. So these two are very important, data transfer and control connection. So this FTP, those 2 points are very, very important. See, we have control connection and data connection. So we will see this control connection and data connection. This control connection is very simple rules for communication. Through control connection, we can transfer a line of command or line of response at a time. The control connection is made between the control processes. The control connection remains connected during the entire interactive FTP session. In the data connection, that is uses a very complex rules as data type may vary. The data connection is made between the data transfer processes. The data connection opens when a command comes for transferring the files and closes when the file is transferred. So these all are the control connection, data connection. So here we will see the mechanisms of FTP. Actually, this figure shows the model of FTP. So how it works, it involves things like what components. See the user interface, control process, and data transfer process. The server has two components, the server control process and the server data transfer process. These two are important under FTP, control process and data transfer process. See, we have client side and server side. User, that is a client, he or she sends a message. Okay, these are all the components, that is this user interface, this control process, this data transfer process of the components comes under this client. And from here, this will be given to the control connection, that is to TCP. TCP IP, again I am telling, that is TCP IP responsible for both control connection and the data connection. By achieving this control connection and data connection only, it will transfer a data to the opposite side, okay, without any loss of data. So while the data has been transferred from the client to the server, again it has to check whether the data has been transmitted without any loss of data. So it will check with the control process as well as the data transfer process. So this is about FTP. So under FTP, what is the use of FTP? What are the two process, control process and data transfer process? That is control connection, data connection. Then the diagram. These three things are important. And HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, you all are very familiar with this. So whenever you are creating URL, you are typing something, so automatically it will be there. Then a Hypertext Transfer Protocol is responsible for directing to the corresponding website or to the server through the URL given. So it's a standard application level protocol used for exchanging the files on the www. It runs on the top of TCP protocol. As it is responsible for transferring or exchanging the files, it lies at the top of the TCP protocol. Web browsers or HTTP clients that send file requests to the web servers, which in turn handle the request via HTTP service. So the request response protocol, HTTP gives users a way to interact with web resources such as HTML files by transmitting hypertext messages. Yes, between the client and the server. These clients generally use transmission control protocol connections to communicate with the servers. So this is an application layer protocol for transmitting hypermedia documents such as HTML, and it was designed for communication between the web browsers and the web servers, but it can also be used for other processes. What are the types of signals like given? Either may be a request or response, or it may be a typical HTTP request or responses circle. So these all are the different types of request or response given. So communication between clients and the server is done by request and responses. The client sends a HTTP request to the web server receives the request, the server runs an application to process the request, the server returns an HTTP response to the browser, the client receives the response, the HTTP request circle. As well as when we come to the typical HTTP request response circle, what are the things we have? The browser requests an HTML page, the server returns an HTML file. Then we have the browser request style, then cascading, that is CSS means cascading style sheet, right? The server returns a CSS. And the browser request in JPEG as well as the same from the server returns a JPEG. So this is called request response circle. Okay? Rotation basis. Then browser request JS as well as this returns the server returns the JS page. So the browser requests data, the server returns the same thing. So this is the HTTP request and response, and this is the diagram which shows the HTTP request and response. Then event occurs, it's from the browser side. It's create an XML HTTP request object and send HTTP request to the server. So process HTTP request, create a response and send data back to the browser. So this server is responsible for receiving the data from the browser side as well as it communicate with other servers corresponding to the data and send the data back to the browser. This is responsible for the server that is possible by the HTTP request and response. Once it collects the information, then it will send back to the data to the browser through this HTTP response. So the process the return data using JS or it will update the page content. That is also done by the HTTP request and response. So this HTTP also very important in file transfer. Under application layer. The next one is SNMP. This SNMP is a simple network management protocol. Actually, this is simple network management protocol. It's a framework used for managing devices on the internet, and it provides a set of operations for monitoring and managing the internet. If an organization has thousands of devices, then all the devices is used, and every day they are working properly, and the task are not to use these up. This SNMP is used. So this handles with the devices mainly. And this SNMP is an application layer protocol which uses UDP port number. It's used to monitor the network, detect network faults, and sometimes even used to configure remote devices. And next, we will see the components. So these components are very important. So how it works with the support of which components. There are three components of SNMP. We have manager, agent, and MIB. MIB is very important. That is management information base, like database, which holds the information about this network. Okay, as it has to maintain the network, it has to maintain the database. Okay, in the database, all the information has been provided. So here we have SNMP manager first, then SNMP agent, then MIB. First, we have a manager. It is a centralized system used to monitor network, also known as network management station. It's a software management software module. It's installed on the managed device. Managed devices can be network devices like PC, routers, switches, servers, etc. Management information base, as I told you already, this maintain a database like DB. It holds the information about the networks. So this MIB consists of the information of resources that are to be managed. What are the resources means what are the devices can be used, or what are the resources like for the internet for regarding it, that is collecting the information. So what are the resources available? This information is organized hierarchically. So order in order. Then only the retrieving information will be easy if it is maintained in a hierarchical order. consists of objects instances which are essentially um, so here, so these all are the important components, like SNMP, HTTP, FTP, and Telnet, and we have DNS. So I want to recall this application layer. That this layer is responsible for all type of transactions are done to internet between one system to another system. So everything will be given to the top side layer, means upper side layers only. So whatever the data received from the lower level layers, that will be given to the upper level layers through the transport layer that we know, and from the application layer through the session and what's that presentation layer, the application layer will transfer data. This DNS has been used. So this is domain. So based on the area used, based on the type of the data fetched, this will vary. Mm, so we have three types. So this is the way how the name server provides a IP address depend on the domain. When a client is asking for something, how it reacts. So these are the types: inverse domain, generic domain, and country domain. So it has to be written from the bottom to top. So this is the way how the this address has to be obtained. That is from the bottom to top. Then finally, that last part will be the domain. Okay, so when we see from the left to right, the last will be the domain. Left will be the what the minimum requirement we need. Then how DNS has been worked. Then these all are the labels. For each area, it will vary, or each organizations or institute, it will vary. Then the DNS. It may be either inbuilt or it has to be bought with the help of ISP. So it's a separate DNS server component would be needed only in the case wherever vendor specific proprietary updated messages are sent by the DNS client to the internet service provider's DNS service. So this diagram shows how the DDNS interacts with the internet from one system to another system. So it may be inbuilt or it may be bought. So when the data has to be given through the internet, first it will check by the firewall. It does not be having any unauthorized uh, data, third-party access or malicious attacks. To avoid all those things, it will be recovered or saved from the firewall. Telnet, it stands for terminal network. And we have so many commands that identify the prefix character. This is interpreters command, which is having code 255. So we have internet as command, this command code or option code. The next one is FTP. FTP is very important for file transferring. File transfer is very important in this application layer because even the network connection is proper, everything is okay, but still the file has to be transferred properly. Otherwise, the task will not be completed. So this FTP is responsible for file transfer protocol. This is responsible for the error-free or the damage-free files. It has to be transferred to the correct system. Okay, that is it must reach the proper destination. Sometimes there may be difference in file systems, the structures or directory structures. This FTP is used to send a proper format. Even though many systems are involved, this is the mechanism. It involves two things: components, either the control process or the data transfer process. So here, from the user side, the data will be transmitted to the server side, like through the TCP. So this the user has the components as user interface, control process, and data transfer process. It will be transferred to the control server side. The server side also having the control process and the data transfer process. That's the control connection and the data connection. HTTP is very important. That is, it supports hypertext transfer protocol. That is, it's very important to link to the particular web page. So it is without this, the URL will not be completed. It may redirect to somewhere else. So the HTTP is important. The HTTP works with request and response. So in this slide, it has been given clearly what type of request will be given and what type of response will be received from the server side. So without HTTP request and response, the server cannot be communicated with the browser side. Server cannot communicate with the browser side. So this is very important. So see in this slide, we can see how the browser communicates with the server. From the server, how the data will be given to the browser. See, first from a browser, the data will be given to the server. Then from the server, the data will be processed with the request and response. Again, it will be given to the browser side. That is possible by JS. So it will update the page content. So the final one, simple network management protocol that deals with the devices, as I told you already. This is a framework used for managing devices on the internet. It provides a set of operations for monitoring and managing the internet. So in an organization, it will be having lots and lots of systems will be there. When they are working for with a huge number of systems, this will ease this work. That is SNMP is used to simplify the work. This SNMP is an application-like protocol which uses UDP port number. It's used to monitor the network and detect network faults. This is very important as it is managing. As it is a network management protocol, it manages that. It will maintain the database. It will find out all the faults. That is, these 2 points are very important. The next slide we have, that is what are the things it has. See, this has the management information base. So this is very important. Managing information base means as a database, as it is managing the network, it must maintain the MIB. That is, it must maintain the management information database in which it has all the details. This consists of the information of resources that are to be managed. So this information is organized hierarchically. So through the hierarchical order, it will be maintaining a proper delivery of and proper management, proper maintenance of the data. As also it has an SNMP agent, and it has SNMP Manager. It's a centralized system used to monitor network, and it has the agent. As it is maintaining, it will be having communication with